Hi everyone, and welcome to the layers lesson for the World War II project class. Okay, last week you guys did some work with layers. This week we're going to go a little bit further, and this is what is called a photo montage. Now, what we're seeing on the screen is a little bizarre. We've got the loop from Dune Valley. We've got some moai over here. We've got a Phelium ball. We've got a DJ booth from Bali High. We've got two avatars, a paint gun sign. We also have a sign with an arrow on it, the top of a windmill, and let's see, and some lamps. So we've got a lot of stuff here, and it's all set against the background of Motu Motu. How did I do this? This isn't a natural scene in there. Of course it's not. This is a photo montage. Now, what we're going to find is that over on the right hand side, you guys will have access to this PSD. Just go a little bit further down the page and you'll see the link to click on to download it so you can look at it yourself. When we go through and we work with layers, if we click on the eyeball next to each layer, it's going to turn it off. Okay? So we can see that all the stuff that I've put in is each individual piece. And what we do when we make a photo montage and we work with layers like this, we can actually influence how each individual one looks. We can tell it, where it should be on the image, everything right there. So what I'm going to do is turn on all my layers again. And also we're going to do some work with some layer masks. That's what these guys are, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But so we have our image. Now let's go ahead and get started on this one, and I'll go and explain it as we go. Now, guys, you have to remember that this is a homespun lesson from me. I am just teaching you what I know. So let's go ahead and minimize that. And we have our image that I've given you, which is the background. Okay, we have this image. Then, of course, I gave you guys the Phelium ball. I gave you a mug of cocoa to work with, a female avatar, a male avatar. I gave you the windmill top, the paint gun sign, the moai, and he looks a lot different. We're going to cover that, how we chopped off the bottom without damaging the image. We have a guitar on a stand. We also have the lamp. We have the sign with the arrow on it. We have a couple of houses, a house there, and we have the DJ booth from Bali High. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize all of these. There we go. When we minimize all of these, it makes it a lot easier to work in our workspace. So we don't have everything open at once. Everything's labeled, so we don't have to worry about it. We know exactly what we're going to grab. Okay, so we've got our background. Now, when we have all these different pieces of the puzzle, what we want to do is start just working with it. So first thing I'm going to start with is my loop. You'll notice that's all nice and taken down where you only have the image with no background. It's transparent. So what I'm going to do is click on my move tool, and whenever you are moving images from one image to another, all you have to do is take the move tool, click, and drag it into your new image. Okay, so we've already got our loop sitting here, but you know what? It's a little big for our purposes on the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Edit and then Free Transform. Now, what we do with Free Transform can expand the size or make your image smaller, okay? What we're going to do with that is what I did to go back to its standard state was just hit the escape key. So I'm going to go back to Edit, Free Transform, and now I'm going to hold down my Shift key to constrain the proportions, because I don't, then guess what? It's going to go all kinds of weird and funky, okay? So by constraining the proportions by holding down the Shift key, okay, I can resize my image and not have it lose any of its qualities, as in it's not going to distort, okay? Control T with the Shift key causes Free Transform, and it constrains the proportions, okay? Hold down that Shift key. It's important, because if you don't hold it down, then it's going to get ruined. Okay, so now I noticed that I have some edges. When I cut this out, my edges weren't as wonderful as I'd like them to be. So I want to take a selection of my loop. Now what I can do as a shortcut on my layers panel over here is I can hold down my control key, and you're going to notice there's a little box, a selection box, like the the rectangular marquee that's sitting right on top of this little finger I have here. So what I'm going to do is click like that, and it's going to load it up, load that layer up as a selection. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to select and then to feather, and I'm going to feather it in a radius of 2 pixels. And I'm going to click OK. Now what that's going to do is it's going to shrink it down a little bit. So what I can do to take off those edges is do a select, inverse, and then hit my delete key, which is clear. Okay, and then we're deselect, and we'll notice that it came out really nice. If we double click and go to 100%, and you'll notice it's got some nice smooth edges. We could still touch it up a little bit more if we'd like, but this will do for our purposes right now. Because remember guys, we're just doing this on the fly. We're not going for perfection. Okay, so what we have now is I've placed my loop in a place that I think will look right. It's sitting on the background, so I can have the stakes going into the ground just right. Okay, so our loop is now sitting in the background. Also, you know what? I have my wonderful DJ booth that I thought was absolutely wonderful. That's from Bali High. What I can do, click on it with my move tool, drag it on, and there we go. And it sits there. But you know what? It's a little too big. So I'm going to take it and reduce the size with free transform, holding down the shift key to constrain the proportions. And I can even make it a little bit smaller to push it in the background even further, because this is more of a little party scene. Okay, so I've got my DJ booth there. Okay, we're coming along. All right, so now, we had our helium ball in there, I think. Yep, let's go ahead, click and drag the helium ball. And what we can do is we can have it bouncing in the distance. And what we'll do is just free transform, get it down to the size we want it to be, remembering what it looks like in worlds. So it's going to be a little bit bigger. We can move it to wherever we want it to go. Okay? Now we've got our helium ball, and of course this is very different from my finished product I did earlier. Okay? Very different, but you know what? That's the beauty of layers. Every time you use a layer, you can move things around. Now, we're even going to go a little bit further and make it look like this ball is bouncing way up into Motu, up into the mountains. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy our layer via Edit. Well, what we're going to do is just copy our layer by clicking and dragging, and there's a layer icon right at the bottom of our layers palette. Just click on it and release, and it's going to make a copy of it. You're going to notice that it already says layer copy. Okay, I'm going to go through and layer and label my layers, because if I don't, I'm going to get lost. So we have the loop, we have the DJ booth, and all I'm doing is double clicking on the layer, and then it will allow you to rename it, and then we'll have helium ball. Okay, and then we're going to call this one the helium ball shadow, because we're about to make a custom drop shadow. Now, we notice that our ball is way up in the air. Yes, it's bouncing off into who knows where. So what we're going to do is go ahead, hold down our control key, click on the helium ball shadow, and we're going to go ahead and take that and hold down our alt key, hit backspace, and we're going to fill it with black. Now, we've taken our ball, but we've covered it up. This is why we use layers, because now we're going to take the shadow of the ball and put it underneath the original. Now, we can't see it right now, but we're going to. What we can do is take our helium ball and turn off the layer, so that way we see the shadow underneath. The first thing we're going to do is free transform. Well, actually, let's not. Let's go to Filter, and what we're going to do is go to Blur, and then to Gaussian Blur. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a lot of blur on our ball. And what we're going to do is just take it out till we get it to where we would like it to be. In this case, I want a lot of fuzz around it. Now I'm going to turn my helium ball back on, and it's already got the shadow behind it, but we need to put that on the ground. So what we're going to do is transform it. Now, what is the neat thing about free transform? If we hold down the control key as we've got free transform open, what it's going to do is it's going to give us this little grayed out arrow, and that is the scale tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to push it down all the way until it's almost flat. Okay? Push it down until it's almost flat. Okay? And then what we're going to do is constrain our proportions by holding Shift, and then we're going to decrease the size of the shadow. Okay? Now we hit Enter, and then we bring it down here on the ground. So it looks like our helium ball has left a shadow. Now all we have to do, go over, take down our opacity, and there's the ball's shadow. We can move the shadow around wherever we'd like. So if we want it to seem like it's bouncing straight up, we can put that shadow right underneath, and it's going to be just perfect. So it's taken off for outer space. Bye-bye, helium ball. We're done with you for now. All right, next up, we're going to do, what did we have? Let's do our moai. Now, our friends the moai in our finished product that we see, our reference photo, are all sitting over here on the hill, but you notice that they vary in size. Okay, let's do that. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is, wait a second, Sherry, he's facing the wrong way. That's right, our little friend the moai. Hang on, let me move this over. Our little friend the moai in the original shot is facing in the opposite direction. So what we're going to do is go ahead and pull our moai into our picture. There we go, there he is. And of course, he's got some edges, so let's go ahead and select it, holding down the control key and clicking on the layer. Then what we're going to do is go select, feather, go by 2 pixels, and click OK. Then we're going to do a select inverse, which is select, inverse, then we hit delete to clear it, and control D for deselect. So there's our moai, and he's got some nice edges now. So let's go ahead and put him up on the hillside, but we're going to have to start with our free transform, control T. Okay, now what we do when he's got his bounding box around him, right click, and you're going to be able to tell it to flip horizontally. Now he's facing the right direction. Super cool. But look at all the base that's underneath him. My goodness. Where's the nudge tool when you need it? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take down this area of his base, but we don't want to destroy the image just in case we want to move it around later. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right here down to the bottom right corner. And what it's going to do is add a layer mask. And you'll notice that it's linked to the layer. It's got a little set of chains next to it, so that way it's going to link to the layer. Now what we're going to do is click on our rectangular marquee, and we're going to make a marquee right underneath the chin of the moai, but still leaving him a little bit of base. Okay? And then we cover up the rest of the base. All we have to do with a mask, now with masks, what you'll notice is that when you have on, say, the Raven mask in World, okay, that's a good example, the mask only shows through the parts that we want to see. In this case, for the moai, we're removing the bottom portion, but we're leaving the image intact, taking a mask and putting it over the bottom of the image. So what we're going to do on our layer mask is fill it with black, because it only works, masks are only in grayscale. when we work with masks, we can have differing levels of opacity, but we're going to go and we're going to cover masks another day, but I want you guys to get familiar with it right now just by using a simple one to cover up the bottom of the moai. So what we do is do an edit, and then we do fill, and it says use the foreground color. We click OK, and guess what happened? We covered up the base of the moai. So now it's going to look like when we move him into place that he is sitting in the ground. Now what we can also do with our mask is come through with a gray, if we use a gray color. Okay, oops, let's go to our brush tool. Okay, Photoshop has officially locked up on me. There we go. Okay, thank you for clicking back into place. Okay, so we've got a gray here. Now, actually, I'm going to go with a little bit lighter gray. And if you want to know, it's the RGB values, since gray is always equal, it's a 194 gray, okay? And enter 194 for the R, G, and B values, and you'll come out with this gray. Okay, now, what we're going to do is take our brush, and what we're going to do is come in with a, let's come in with a fairly large brush, like a 21. And what we're going to do is take our brush tool, and with the gray, since it works in grayscale, is what we're going to do and make sure that your layer mask is selected, and it'll have a box around it. What you'll do is just gently start filling it in. And what we'll notice is that it's going to bring in a little bit more so we can make it look like our moai is sitting in the ground. Okay, we can even come back, do a little bit more, go a little bit darker. Okay, and then just fill all that in. Okay, and that works really, really well. And if I want to take stuff out, then I just use the black, and it takes more out. Okay? But we can always go in with our tools and make sure that we have got this just exactly the way we want it. Okay? If we want to, we can go back to white. Just make sure those are filled in nice. And there you go. One layer masked moai who looks like he's sitting right into the ground. Okay, now remember, when you're working with a layer mask, if you go to pure white, it works just like you would when you're painting a buggy. White is completely opaque. White is transparent. Black is opaque. So that way you can do that. Okay, so now we have our moai. Let's go ahead and label him, and we're going to call him the large moai. And then we click enter. We hit enter. Now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate a layer. Now what we're going to do is hold down our Alt key. Okay, and you'll notice that my cursor has become a black arrow with a white arrow. That means it's going to copy it. So we just click and drag, and we've made another moai. And of course, it hangs on to the mask. Now, he's still a little big though. So now we're going to free transform. Okay, and we're just going to pull him down. We're going to hold the shift key to constrain the proportions. And either that, or I can tell it, you know what, I want him to be 75% of the original. So I can go up here in my options bar for my free transform and enter my values, clicking enter afterwards. Okay, hitting enter afterwards. So there, we can move him into place so he sits a little higher up on the hill. Okay, if we want to, we can make one more. Hold down your Alt key, click and drag. Okay, then free transform, and then we can tell it I want it to be 75% of its size. So let's take it to 75. So we got the little guy sitting up there. Okay, and we can make him fit in right like that. Okay, so now we've got our 3 moai in place. We've got our helium ball that looks like it's taken off for the heavens. And if we want to, since we want the helium ball to sit up on top of everything, we're going to go ahead and move it to the top of the layer list. Okay, if we want to, we can go in and take our moai and give them drop shadows, just like we did the helium ball. But that's up to you. I just want to make sure that we're covering all the layer basics. Okay, so now we're working a lot in the layers panel. We've duplicated a layer by clicking on the layer and dragging it down to the create new layer icon, and we did that with the helium ball. We also duplicated a layer by holding down our Alt key and copying it that way. Okay, so we're getting in pretty good shape. We're coming along. Now we've got our helium ball bouncing, we've got the loop in the background, we've got our moai standing there. Now, what else do we want to put in here? Let's see. Well, we had our sign with the arrow. Let's go ahead and bring in that in. Okay, click and drag. Then, of course, our free transform. Our free transform. And what we're going to do is we're going to just pull it down into the size we want it to be. And since our party's up ahead, well, let's go ahead. Yeah, let's make it a little smaller. Okay, so we can say that, hey, you can go and race over here, racing ahead. There we go. And we can put that in like that. Okay, so we've got that piece. If we want to make a shadow, what do? We're going to come in and name it the arrow sign. Okay, then, you know what? Let's go ahead and give it a shadow. Duplicate the layer, and that'll duplicate it directly underneath. This will be the arrow sign shadow. Hold down our Control key, click on the shadow layer, fill it with black. Okay, and right now it's above the layer. But remember, anytime you work with layers, it's like pieces of acetate. It will stack one on top of the other. Whatever is the highest layer is the one that's going to be the one that covers things up. Everything else will sit underneath it. But if we move it behind or if we move it down in our layer order, it's going to fall further back in our image. So let's go ahead and apply the Gaussian blur. So blur, Gaussian blur, and let's give it, the last one we used was, there we go, was at 24, but this one I've turned down to 18. Now we're going to take it and pull it down underneath, free transform it, hold down our Control key for the scale tool, and we're going to pull it down. There we go. So it looks like it's sitting on the ground. Okay. And we want to move it into place by going to our Move tool, and then we're just going to move that layer over so it looks like it's sitting underneath it. Okay. So we know where we're going. Okay, there we go. So now it looks like it's sitting underneath because our light is coming directly from behind us. So we go ahead and take down the opacity of our shadow. There we go. So now we have a nice shadow under that. We can also do the same thing with the DJ booth. If we want to give that a shadow, we can. And so it's really up to you. But as you can see, I've already started to create a lot of depth by using the shadows. So let's go ahead and do the DJ booth real quick. Make a new layer of it. Control click on the layer, and control click, what you're going to do is control click on the little preview in the layers panel, okay? Because if you do it over here, it won't work. Okay, so what we do is we click on the thumbnail in our layers panel, control click. Then what we do is go ahead and fill it with black, Alt backspace, because I've got black and white as my colors. Alt backspace, deselect, come in, select, filter, Gaussian blur. Okay, move that underneath your layer, then Control T for free transform, holding down the Control key again for scale, and pushing it into place. Okay, but remember, you've got to make sure that your shadow's going in the same direction all the time, because if you don't, you got to be really, really careful about that. Okay, but now it looks like our DJ booth is floating. That's not good. So what we're going to do, move up the shadow so it just shows behind just a little bit. There we go. And then we go ahead and take down the opacity. So we've got that behind there. So the sun is shining and it's got a little bit of shadow. And we want to make sure with what we're doing, oops, the helium ball shadow is at 27%. Let's go ahead and take that one down to 27 as well. Okay, and you can see there's just a little shadow behind it. What did our arrow sign shadow have? That had 36. So, you know, if you want to make sure that your shadows, I mean, if they're closer or further away, you got to make sure that, you know, your shadows are the right intensity. But you're making custom drop shadows. I'm so proud of you. You're doing good so far. Okay, so let's go to the DJ booth and tell it that's shadow. Okay, and later on we'll get into how we introduce this into clothing design because you'll love it once you get into that. Okay, so we've got our DJ booth, we've got our arrow sign. Let's tell them that there's paint guns ahead. Beware of paint guns. And where did our little guy go? There, no, that's the male avatar. Well, where did it go? Lamp. Let's go and do a file open. File open, and where's our paint gun sign? There it is. Let's go ahead and open that up. There it is. Okay, so we've got our paint gun sign. So let's go ahead and pull that into our image. There he is. Go ahead and minimize that since we've got this one. Okay, so as you notice, when you introduce a new layer, anytime when you have a layer selected, it's whenever you pull in a new part, it's going to do it above the layer that you were on. So let's go ahead and take our layer and push it all the way up to the top. Okay, so we've got our paint gun sign. And what we're going to do, go ahead and free transform it. We've got to get it to the right size. And what we can do is, since it's going to be way off in the distance, we've got to make it smaller. Okay, and what we can do is just choose the area we want to put it in. So if we want to put it, say, let's put it over here by the moai. Okay, so it looks like it's a little bit further in the distance. There we go. We'll push it back even a little bit further. Okay, so we've got our sign, and it's sitting way in the back. And when we place it, we just want to make sure it looks comfortable, like it looks like it belongs there. So we'll call this the paint gun sign. Okay, and what we can do is we can give that one a shadow as well. Go through, click on it, drag it down to the new layer. It's going to duplicate it. Then we take this one, hold down our control key, click on the thumbnail in the layers panel, then hit Alt backspace to fill it with black. Now let's go ahead and do a filter, Gaussian Blur, and then let's go ahead and move the shadow underneath. And we'll rename it so we know what we're looking for. Okay, and then we're going to hold down our control key, look for that scaling arrow, and then pull it down. And make sure that we are in relatively the same position as our other shadows. So our light source is coming from the same place. Hit enter, move your shadow up into place. Okay, you'll move your shadow up into place, and then take down the opacity. And in this case, we'll use something like 25 or 26. Maybe come up a little bit more, so that way we can see. You know, if you haven't gotten your shadow just right, hit free transform again. You know, oops, hello, wrong button. There we go, and we can move it even further, so that way it's even closer to the ground. There we go, that looks about right. So now we've got the shadow for that. Okay, so we've got our helium ball, we've got the loop, we've got our Bally High DJ booth, we've got our arrow, we've got our paint gun sign, we've got our moai hanging out. We're doing pretty good so far. So let's go ahead and let's introduce our little bitty lamps. Okay, now when we pull in our lamp, same thing. Now look what happens. You see? We pull that up, and now it's going right on top. If we wanted to and really show that it's sitting right next to us, we can keep our lamp fairly large since it's close. But for me, I want to make it a little bit smaller because I'm going to actually do something a little different with this. Is I'm going to take and I'm going to put in multiple lamps. And what I can do is take it, and every time I make a new one, make it a little bit smaller. You know, like this is 80% right now. Okay, let's move it to 80%. Hit enter. And what we can do every time we make a lamp, and then make sure that you're labeling your layers. Whew, it's late. Okay, lamp 2. All right, that's that. And what we want to do is move that second lamp underneath the first so it looks like it's a little further in a distance. And remember, we're seeing the first lamp first. And so, you know, we can even come over here and do a little something like that. So it looks like maybe it's going up the hill or something like that. But in this case, though, we're going to move it a little bit because I'm going to make it look like we're on a path. Okay, and then we'll transform it again. We'll copy it again. We'll go up a little bit further this time. Okay. And then what we can do is free transform. Tell it we want it 80% of the width and 80% of the height of the original. Okay. And we can keep putting in these lamps until the cows come home. But for this case, we'll just stop at 4. Do 80% for each one. So now it's looking like we're going up a little path. Okay, and we need to make sure that we are moving down our lamps each time, so that way we have our nice little area that we're working in. There we go. Let's move that one up a little bit just so we have a nice kind of diagonal scene going on. Okay, so those work. Let's go lamp 3 and lamp 4. Come on, guy. There we go. Just double click on those layers to rename them. Okay, so now we can see we're moving up a nice little path. We've got our DJ booth, we've got our helium ball. What else do we want to put in here? Let's go ahead and let's put in our guy and our girl. Okay, here's our friend. He's already been cut out. We just click and drag him onto our image. And notice he's kind of hanging out in the background. But if we want to set him right here in the foreground, like he's standing right next to us, we most certainly can. With layers, look at there. He can go over the top of stuff. Remember, guys, we don't have to see everything. But there he is, and he's a little rough around the edges. So I'm going to move him up to the top. And then select him, and then do just our little select feather tool, you know, our select feather trick. So that way we can get him maybe a little bit smoother. Okay, so he's a little bit smoother now. Okay, and then we can give him a shadow if we would like. But let's go ahead and bring in our girl. There she is. Hi. And then pull her in. And we can have her standing a little bit further back since she's smaller. Or we can even do one better. We can transform her and place her here in the back near the paint gun sign, like she's standing in the back. And what we do with her, just go ahead and take her layer, oops, hit enter, so her transformation takes effect. Put her underneath the lamps, and there she is standing in the back, maybe, you know, looking for our friend, or just standing behind the lamps over here. And of course, her cutout isn't too great either, so we'll go ahead and do a select feather and 2 pixels, and then we'll select inverse and delete. There we go. So now she looks like she's fitting in our picture pretty good. Okay, so now she's standing in the background, he's standing up here in the front. So let's go ahead and give it male avatar. And then we'll name her female avatar. So that way we've got both of them labeled. And we can give them shadows if we choose to. But see, guys, layers are a wonderful thing because when we use layers, we can move them up and down inside of our image. So maybe, it would look funny if she was standing on top of it, but we can move that layer down to make sure that she looks right. She looks like she's a part of the image. We can also go in with our layer and we can do blending modes. If we say want to do some weird effect with the helium ball and give it some bizarre little bit of oomph, we can go into here in our blending modes and do something interesting there. If we wanted to do something bizarre with our moai, we could definitely do that. I mean, we can make it look like these guys are, basically from outer space. Let's see. There we go. And then we'll do a linear dodge. So we have our 3 bizarre little moai sitting in the background. We can do a whole lot of things when we are working with our blending modes and our layer, because the blending modes for each layer are independent. So that way we can go through and just mess with one particular part of our image, not the whole thing. Now, our friend Greenie, thank you Greenie, does a neat thing where she likes to see her entire image. So what she does is hold down her Alt key. She comes up and there's a little spot. There's a little arrow right at the top corner of the palette. Click and hold the palette. Click and hold your mouse button, then move down to Merge Visible. Now, Merge Visible will flatten all of your layers, but if we hold down our Alt key and click Merge Visible, guess what happens? It actually creates an entire layer that is based on what we have. Let me go ahead and take these out so you can see that it's the entire image. And we can actually go ahead and move that, or what we can do is do this. We can actually do a image adjustments, and we can do a let's do a brightness and contrast. So you can see it's just a little bit darker. And go ahead and change it to an overlay. And what we get is our image differs. We have a little bit more oomph with what we want to do. Okay? And those will actually go through. But let's do an overlay. And what we're going to do is take the opacity down just a little bit, so we get a little bit more oomph in our image. But that's what Merge Visible is all about. So anyway, okay, so we've worked with layers. Also, I forgot one thing. We can do drop shadows using layer styles. Okay, in this case, we're going to do a drop shadow for our friends, the lamps. There we go. And what we can do is give it a little distance. We can choose which direction we want our light to go. Okay, and notice that, unfortunately, there we go. All right, we need to move the angle around on our layer style to get it to move in the direction we want to, so we can have all similar light modes, and we can actually give the size of the lamp. It isn't quite as effective as if you would do it manually, but these are really wonderful because you can do all kinds of things with them. So let's go ahead and take down the opacity of that, so we have a little shadow behind our lamp. So we can actually work with layer styles. If we wanted to come back and bevel this guy, we could. Oh, and of course my computer's taking forever. There we go. If we wanted to, we could bevel it, just to give it a little bit more depth. There's a lot of things that we can do with this. So, and what we would want to do is go ahead and probably take down the opacity of both of our pieces. So that way it has a little bit more life to it. So, inside, but notice that it's only applied to this one layer. Okay, if we want to, we can right click and go copy layer style and paste the layer style to the next lamp, and do that again with each one. There we go. And so our lamps look a little bit different. They look a little bit more at home. So anyway, we've covered layer styles. If we want to, we also have a new fill or adjustment layer. What we can do is come through and do maybe a new gradient layer that's over it, and it actually comes with a mask. We can do a gradient fill. We can do a whole lot of things just right here from our layers panel. Also, notice that I have 4 lamps. If I have each and every one of these lamps, and you know what? You can move each one individually, but if we want to move them as a group, we have 2 options. What we can do is we can take each of these lamps. Now this is Photoshop CS2, so all I'm going to do is hold down my control key to individually select these layers. And what I can do is go up to layer, group layers, and it will group it into one folder, so that way you have all your layers in one place, and we'll call this the lamps. And now, instead of moving them individually, we can now move them as a group. So we can make it look like maybe there's a runway going down the middle. And they all have their layer style, so they've all been drop shadowed, and we have stuff that we can do with that. Experiment with your different types of layer styles. There's a lot that you can do with them. And of course, if we wanted to group our male and our female avatar, we most certainly could, holding that control key and clicking each one, and then go to layer, group layers, and it's also control G, and we can say avatars. Okay, and if we wanted to do our moai, same drill. Layer, group layers, and we can call them the moai. Okay, so we've grouped layers. Also, what we can do, if we have, say, our shadows, like our DJ booth and its shadow, what we can do is actually link the layers. Now there's a neat little what looks like chain. That's link layers. You can also do it by right-clicking and clicking on link layers. Now those two will be linked. It works just like a grouping, except that the layers stay together, okay, when you move them around. Notice how the shadow stays with the booth. Okay, so we can move that back down into place. And so there's a lot of neat things that you do right here in the layers panel. Also, we have our channels panel. Whenever we save a selection, we can save it, like if we go to select, save selection like we did, well, let's see, let's take our arrow sign. Hold down your control key, click on our layer for the arrow sign, and what you can do is actually save that selection. We can do select, save selection, and we can go arrow sign. Okay, and then if we need to, if say we wanted to have a little bit of our guy, a little bit more of the sign showing through his leg, or if we wanted to do something bizarre, all we would have to do is load up the selection, and then we could either mask it so it covers up part of his leg, or we can actually remove pieces from our the layer on top. You know, if we want to cut it away and not keep it, we could do that as well. So you know, this is just examples of what you can do with layers. And remember, everything is mobile when you work with layers. A lot of times you'll hear a lot of developers that just will swear up and down by it. And you know what, guys? They're not kidding. Layers will save your bacon a lot of times. So let me, let's see. I think we can wrap it up for today on that. I hope you had fun making layers and enjoy making your photo montage. It's a lot of fun. You know, everything that you do, you can do a lot of different stuff. Like we didn't even bring in our friend the windmill, which we could have. There's so much that you can do just by using layers, just by pulling things in, and then you can make it look like, you know, he's got some kind of bizarre headdress. And if we want to, giving him a bizarre headdress. That's kind of fun. Let's go to the moai. Let's go to his, select him. And what we're actually, no, we don't want to do that. What we're going to do since it goes over the boundaries of our background, what we're going to do is we're going to take one selection, which is the top, and then we're going to hit our shift key, and what we're going to do is we're going to make a little bit more of a selection just by coming over to the edge here and then coming straight up for a 1 pixel selection on top of it. Okay, then what we can do on our layer is go ahead and we can save the selection, or we can add the layer mask. Oops, I goofed. Okay, do the layer mask, and then what we can do is invert it. Oops, sorry guys. Bye. There we go. And then, oops, Z, cross shift inverse. Guys, can you please inverse for me? Thank you. And then we can fill it with white. There we go. Now we got it. Okay, so now he's got some weird headdress on. If we want to, we can add even more to that mask. And we want to take that little piece out right there. Just fill it with black. And there you go. Now he's got some kind of weird headdress on. Hey, you never know. This is what you do with layers and masks and transforming stuff. This has been a really good overview of a combination of a lot of stuff, but it's all layer dependent. If you don't use layers, then you're going to get a mess, because there's no way you could have compiled an image like this without it. So, okay, that wraps it up for this week. Have a good time with this. All of the pieces of the puzzle are inside the folder. There's the link on the page. Guys, go have fun with this, and make sure you post your finished results in their Painter forums, okay? I'd love to see what you do with this. All right, have fun, and we'll do this again next week.